Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Over the next half an hour, we'll be looking beyond the business headlines by giving you in-depth perspective on the stories that are affecting all of us. Coming up on today's show, Democrats Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg may have won favour in New Hampshire and Iowa, but has the party done enough to discredit Trump's economic policies? Staying with the US, it was a tale of two stories for the east and west of Africa last week. While Kenya is being wooed by America for a free trade deal, Nigeria has been placed on an immigrant visa ban. We'll be fleshing out both sides of the story. Before those discussions, here's our business correspondent Simon Pusey, who joined me in the studio for a breakdown of this week's biggest business stories. Hi Simon, the UK economy, zero growth at the end of 2019.
Yeah, this isn't a massive surprise really, but the final 3 months of 2019, as you say, there was zero growth. It's mainly because of the manufacturing sector, which slowed for the third month in a row. The service sector also slowed around the time of the election. A lot of people pointing to the election as the kind of turning point. Obviously, before the election, a lot of uncertainty about Brexit, whether Brexit was actually going to get done, and investors not investing. But since then, obviously, we've had the election. We know the Conservatives are in, and we kind of know a little bit more about the Direxit of Brexit, that we are leaving the EU, so it seems things will have picked up. Recent surveys have suggested that the economy will pick up in the new year. It's likely that the political uncertainty and unwinding stockpiles caused the economy to flag at the end of last year. However, firms entering 2020, they have a bit more of a spring in their step. Confidence seems to be shooting up, while plans and investment intentions have so far risen up a notch in the last few weeks. But that doesn't change the fact that the ONS, Office for National Statistics, said that the economy grew by just 1.4% in 2019. That's just a little bit higher than the 1.3% in 2018.
Wow, okay. Google, they're fighting a massive European Commission fine. What's that all about?
Yeah, so this is huge. This is 2 billion euros, and it's actually one of 3 fines, billion-euro fines, that the company has faced from the European Commission. This one seems to be around, when you go onto Google, you type in, you're searching for a product, and then Google advertises some of those products. Well, they are accused of basically pushing their own products that they want to sell ahead of rival competitors. The 2 billion euro fine handed out in 2017. The hearing's going to take place at the General Court in Luxembourg over the next 3 days. In a statement, Google have said, "We're appealing the European Commission's 2017 Google shopping decision because it is wrong on the law, the facts and the economics. Shopping ads have always helped people find the products they are looking for quickly and easily, and helped merchants to reach potential customers." It's understood the tech giant will argue that it fulfilled its legal obligations to allow rivals access to its products. But it'll be interesting to see over the next 3 days how that pans out. They've always said they're going to fight this fine, but it's not the only fine Google are facing. Like I said earlier, they are facing $3 billion fines from the European Commission.
Huge crackdown on tech firms. Nissan, they're filing a lawsuit against the company's former boss. What's all that about?
Yeah, this is the fascinating story of Joseph Ghosn. That's the former chairman of Carlos Ghosn, Joseph's his brother. Carlos, who famously disappeared in a musical instrument case to get onto a flight. Was that
verified?
So far unverified, but he's never going to verify that. To sort of escape the authorities in Japan when he was obviously under arrest. Nissan say they're seeking $90 million worth in compensation. Wow. So this is a civil lawsuit that they're taking against Carlos. The company says it aims to recover a significant part of the monetary damages inflicted on the company by its former chairman. Mr. Ghosn is currently in Lebanon, of course, after jumping bail in Japan, where he faces several charges of financial misconduct. Nissan said it expects that amount to actually increase in the future. The company also said that it may pursue separate legal action over what it called groundless and defamatory remarks. Now that's after Mr. Ghosn held a news conference when he first got to Beirut to basically explain himself. He said there were various individuals who are plotting against him, and Nissan are saying that that was defamatory. So again, it's going to be interesting to see exactly how much they go after him for and what his response will be.
Gosh, that keeps it running and running, doesn't it? Simon Pusey, thank you so much. Here's some other business news from across the globe. Samsung has unveiled a square-shaped foldable smartphone. Its second try at a novel technology that the Korean cell phone maker hopes will set it apart from rivals Apple and Huawei. The foldable glass Galaxy Z Flip, which looks like a large makeup compact folded up and expands to look like most smartphones, will come in purple, gold and black and is available to purchase today at a starting price of $1,380. The European Union has agreed to open its markets wider to Vietnam while closing its trade doors to Cambodia, rewarding Hanoi for its progress on labour guarantees and sanctioning Phnom Penh for human rights abuses. The move marks the EU's increased insistence that trading partnerships go beyond market liberalisation and must be coupled with commitments to environmental, labour and social standards. Fuel shortages have left some motorists in Sudan spending entire days in queues that stretch for several kilometres. Authorities say the issue has been caused by a broken refinery pipeline that they are working to fix. Imports and distribution of fuel have been restricted by foreign currency shortages and a lack of road transport and port capacity. Bernie Sanders narrowly won New Hampshire's Democratic presidential primary on Tuesday, solidifying his frontrunner status in the nominating race and dealing a setback to moderate rival Joe Biden, who finished a disappointing fifth. Moderate Pete Buttigieg, the 38-year-old former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, was in second place after edging out Sanders in last week's chaotic and disputed first nominating contest in Iowa. As the battle to beat Donald Trump to the White House heats up, there's no denying the Democrats have a tough fight on their hands. The US economy is in good shape, and the president is hoping the election will become a referendum on his financial policy over the past 4 years. For some grassroots analysis, joining me on Skype from New Jersey is Walter Fields, the CEO and executive editor of North Star News. Walter Fields, once again, thank you for joining me on Channel's Business Global. This is really interesting because the last time we spoke, which was a couple of months ago, I was talking about Elizabeth Warren because some of the press were pushing her as a potential frontrunner ahead of Joe Biden. Fast forward a couple of weeks, you've got Bernie Sanders and Buttigieg, sorry about the pronunciation, storming through Iowa and New Hampshire. What's happened?
Well, as it happened in many years, this is a very volatile Democratic primary season. And so the results have been very unpredictable. Where many thought that Joe Biden was going to be sort of the runaway candidate, he's really faltered. Elizabeth Warren picked up some steam, but now she seems to be falling behind. And Bernie Sanders has surged to the front. And I think this reflects the indecision of Democratic voters as to who will be the best candidate to face off with Donald Trump in November.
So I don't know if you follow much of what happens here, but Donald Trump does have a twin brother, let's say, called Boris Johnson. And look, we saw it in December, the Labour Party, the opposition party, the party for the working class, they lost a big swathe, a big chunk of their support because they didn't necessarily identify with where the party was going. Do you see that's what's happened with the Democrats, that they're kind of losing their main support base?
Absolutely. I think what's happened in the United States and probably to the same degree in the UK is that the right has perfected the art of appealing to the worst extremes of the nation, but packaging it in such a way that it plays out as patriotism. And so in the United States, Donald Trump has come along and his policies are actually disastrous for the very people who support him. But what he's done, he's wrapped it in the American flag. And so he's playing this identity politics where it's basically white extremism wrapped in the American flag. And the Democratic Party has yet to figure out how to really combat that when their constituency is primarily African Americans, Latinos, and progressive whites.
Absolutely. Got to talk about the main man there, Trump. The election is really, really close. It's getting there, isn't it? And he was just recently acquitted of all charges at the impeachment trial. I don't know how it was reported in America, but here it was almost seen as a joke, a little bit of a waste of money. Of course, we know impeachment is serious, whether or not you will be acquitted. But do you think this has potentially helped Trump get into the White House come November the 5th or 4th?
I'm not sure that it's helped. I think all the polling in the country now shows that the majority of Americans wanted witnesses at that impeachment trial. And all the polling also shows him trailing every top Democratic candidate. The impeachment trial was important for Americans because it was more than just about Donald Trump. It was about preserving constitutional integrity.
5 million Americans have been lifted off of food stamps. Unemployment has reached the lowest rate in over half a century. More people are working in America now than in any time of its history. These aren't, I'm afraid, Walter, Trumpian boasts. These are empirically verifiable facts. What do you say about that?
The problem with that data is that while more Americans are working more than one job. And so while unemployment may be low, long-time joblessness is high. So while, yes, many more Americans are working, but many more Americans are working two jobs to make ends meet. So the employment data is really misleading. And I think people are beginning to understand that, because when you go throughout the country, you hear incredible stories of economic distress among American families, where two working adults in a household may be working more than one job and still not being able to make ends meet. So I don't think that data, when it is properly displayed to the American electorate, people will understand, because they're feeling that pain on a day-to-day basis.
It's interesting you say that, Walter. And of course, again, you know, statistics do distort, so you do have to be careful with it. But there are some people that are close to the, you know, White House sources that are saying that Donald Trump wants this to be a referendum on the economy, and that the economy is doing so well. You know, nobody will vote against that. It's interesting that you parallel that with, you know, with the facts on the ground. But do you think that he can get anything out of these economic facts?
I don't think so. I mean, we saw this before with President George H. Bush when Bill Clinton first ran against him. The economy was actually coming back very strong under President Bush. And President Clinton just ran his campaign in a way to expose the fallacy of the American economy. So I'm not convinced that Donald Trump can run on the economy. There are too many people hurting in America right now for him to be able to take a stand to say that you should reelect me based upon my economic performance. I think most Americans now, because of wealth inequality in this nation and seeing the gross disparities in wealth in America, because poverty is still a problem in America, most Americans who go to the polls in November are not going to go to the polls because they believe that they are in better shape economically today than they were when the previous president held office.
Well, that's a good point. Just lastly, Walter, before I let you go, before Super Tuesday, Michael Bloomberg, the popular billionaire, will join the Democratic race. Does he have a hope? Do the Democrats need somebody like Michael Bloomberg, more of a centrist, which is what in the UK the Labour Party didn't have, to appeal to both sides of the fence?
I don't know if the Democratic Party needs Michael Bloomberg. The fact of the matter is that he is a man with a lot of money, so therefore the Democratic Party would be freed with some of the burden of fundraising, because Michael Bloomberg can primarily self-finance his campaign. The challenge with Michael Bloomberg is he's going to have to reconcile some of his policies as mayor of New York City in order to convince large numbers of African Americans and Latinos to vote for him in this election, because that is the most important contingent of the Democratic Party base.
Wow.
If he can do that, he could be a strong candidate, but it remains to be seen whether or not he can actually do that. If he can't, he won't be successful as a Democratic candidate.
Who's your money on, Walter?
Well, I think at this point, I think Sanders looks like he is going to go into the convention very strong. But I think a Bernie Sanders candidacy is going to need a woman as a vice presidential candidate or a person of color. I think the Democratic Party has two white males as their ticket this year. They will lose. The party now represents the emerging America, and the emerging America are people of color, African Americans, Latinos, and Asians, and women.
Absolutely. Such an important point to end on. Walter Fields, thank you so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global. When we catch up again, who knows who'll be the front runner?
Very true. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Walter. Coming up, Trump, Kenya and Nigeria. See you after the break.